Ray Dalio has a significant warning for all of you out there, and especially when we combine this with what we just saw from the Federal Reserve, it seems as though we are treading into very unprecedented times economically, financially, and on the global scale when it comes to the monetary system as a whole. So with that being said, welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. If we take a quick look at what the Fed did push on Wednesday, they did pivot. We have breaking. The Federal Reserve has cut interest rates by 50 basis points in their first rate cut since March of 2020. More specifically, this was one of the most surprising Fed decisions since 2009. Going into the decision, just 40% of market participants saw a 50 BPS rate cut coming. It also marked the first Fed decision since 2005 with a Fed member dissenting. The Fed shocked the world today. And if we also build upon this, we have breaking. The S&P 500 rises to a new all-time high after the Fed surprised markets and cut rates by 50 basis points. The index is now up a whopping 20% year to date. The Fed pivot is here. The volatility index is up even as markets hit new all-time highs. Now the question becomes why the Fed decided to cut 50 BPS. If it signals a recession on the way, markets may sell the news. Now, 24 hours after this, almost 48 hours after this, markets are still pretty stable for the most part. Yes, volatility is definitely there. Like I've mentioned multiple times, we are having a significant run-up. I think everyone has been expecting a massive sell-off after this. I think everyone has been really kind of tying this back to 2008 and saying, all right, well, history doesn't always repeat, it rhymes. And although, yes, that is the case, one thing that I will say is I do think that this is going to shake a lot of people out. I think that's going to surprise a lot of people on what happens next. Because for me personally, the major move that happens next is markets melt up. We are going to have what seems like a blow-off top. Everyone's not going to be able to time it perfectly. And what's going to happen? Well, we're going to have a lot of, sidelined cash FOMOing in on the top. And then we will have the meltdown. This is going to lead into a changing world order. It's also going to lead us into a major reset. Let's actually move into that actually. So here we have the Great Rate Reset. Big shout out to Smoke Dog for this. We have welcome to the Great Rate Reset. This is what institutions are calling the current period following the recent 0.5 BPS rate cut by the Federal Reserve. Essentially, guess what? It's not just markets that are shocked. This shocked everyone. This highly anticipated cut will impact financial markets across all sectors. The asset price movements in the first half were expected, as the market awaited a clear stance from Jerome Powell. Now, with the Fed rate cuts in place, growth trends for assets are expected to emerge across the financial landscape. In this new playing field, preparation and execution are key. The rich will get blank and the poor will get blank. I do believe that everyone knows exactly what those blanks are, as the rich does get richer and the poor will get poorer. Because just like '08, guess what happened? Yes, we ran up. Everyone got rich, but what happened after was those that did get rich did not sell at the right time, so they got wiped out. And the rich, well, they got bailouts, they got wealthier. It was a very clear motive to keep the 1% at the 1% and keep the 99% at the 99%. But here we have the Great Rate Reset. We've seen the end of an interest rate era. Global developed market yields are now above the cycle neutral yield levels published by JP Morgan Asset Management's 2024 long-term capital markets assumptions. Investors can increasingly rely on core fixed income to reach their financial goals. We're expecting a modest U.S. growth slowdown. Growth will likely slow below the trend, but remain positive. Doesn't sound all that convincing. With the help of Fed cuts next year, we expect trend-like growth in the second half of 2024. So again, as we really think about what's happening here, they're kind of preparing us for the slowdown. They're preparing us for the recession. They don't want to say that R word because the second that they do, that's it. We also have over here taken advantage of the market's big reset. What is the big reset? Simply put, the big reset refers to the recovery phase that follows a prolonged period of sideways or negative price performance across various asset classes. This document from Citibank remains or explains exactly that and highlights why it's crucial for all investors not to miss this opportunity. In past cycles, it was clear when to invest again, typically when there was blood in the streets during all-time lows, recessions, etc., but not this time. This time, the reset is happening without a recession. All asset classes, including cryptocurrencies, are simultaneously positioned to deliver strong returns. For this reason, along with interest rate resetting, investors should reset their market expectations and capitalize accordingly. Are you prepared? Now, this is the thing, right? So this is taking advantage of market's big reset. This is from Citi. Remember that, right? Because this is from Citi, one of the big banks. We have, what is the big reset? The big reset in financial markets is happening across equity, fixed income, and alternative investments. Its simplest explanation is that after a period like 2022, when stock and bond performance is deeply negative, markets tend to first heal, then recover towards historically normal ranges of activity. The big reset is happening without a major recession. I think that it's way too early to say that and call that. Again, we are in an election year. They're not going to let the R word slip in election year. 2025 is when things get very, very bad. I've talked about this on multiple occasions. Even with the rate cut, it came off the back of the weak jobs report. The economy is slowing. Growth is slowing. They even warned you in this JP Morgan report over here that we are going to see modest US growth slowdown in the first half of 2024, and this will most likely continue. If this is the case, okay, if this is continuing, and if we think about 2025, because in 2024, yes, everything did slow down. They're talking about normalization and growth in 2025. But how are we going to get there? We haven't even avoided the recession yet. A lot of people believe that we're already in it. Now, Citi is saying that in our view, it would be unfortunate for investors to miss this moment, as many asset classes are poised to recover in a fairly synchronous manner, with equity, debt, and alternative investments possessing both unique and related reasons for their return to potential solid returns. This is why trying to time markets will be impossible in 2024. It is time, instead, for investors to reset their expectations. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate what I said. Melt up into a meltdown. I do believe that investors are not ready for what's coming. They're not prepared. And the reason why I say that is because, yes, we are going to have a very substantial time in this market where you can make a ton of money. The issue is most people are not already in. They're not prepared for this. They don't have their investments set. They're waiting to buy. They think that they could buy lower, but that's why the blow off top is going to happen, or the melt up in this case. They're going to buy in on the upswing, expecting a lot higher. And as they're waiting for higher, boom, they announce the recession. We're in a recession. That's causing the massive crash. And that's where we start to see the reset of these markets, the full reset of these markets, because we are in a completely changing world order. We're in a reset of the world order. A new reserve currency is on its way. Or in my opinion, I don't believe that we have a new reserve currency. I believe that we have a complete change of the global monetary system towards digital. Because DLT, blockchain, AI, it's all the focus right now from all of the big players. But they are distracting you with the whole idea of Bitcoin and Ethereum. You need to look beyond that on what they're actually addressing, which is tokenization and financial use cases. But from Ray Dalio, he put out a post on LinkedIn roughly back in November of 2022, and it was changing world order is approaching stage 6, the war stage. Now, this talked about war. The whole post itself is jam-packed with a ton of great information. But we have here that I believe that reviewing how the typical big cycle works, what stage we are in, and what typically comes next is now especially important. That is because the evidence points to us being in on the brink of civil and/or international war. In my book, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, I describe this as late stage 5, on the brink of stage 6, and because without understanding how these cycles transpire, we will simply observe events in the news without being adequately prepared for them or able to prevent them. Now, he is talking about 2025, 2026. Because the whole point of this is, what I'm saying is that the different sides in domestic and international conflicts are preparing for war, and if events are allowed to progress as they typically do, there's a dangerously high probability of us being in at least one of these wars, if not both, in about 5 years, give or take about 3, with the highest risk point being 2025 to 2026. And this does align with the whole idea of a recession. It aligns with, everything around the markets crashing, because remember, 2025 to 2026 is also, we're outside of the presidential elections. We have a new president. Everything starts to change. Also, that timeline aligns perfectly with what the elites have been pushing, the BIS, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the IMF, all of them. But also, from this podcast over here from Charlie Rose, this was 2 years ago. This is the current moment and the changing world order. This is Ray Dalio. Check this out. This is a very significant video. It's 4 minutes long. Listen closely to this.
And what is the moment we're in now? Are we, in your judgment, in a moment in which the world order is going to change?
Yes, we're changing the world order. Okay. In 1945, we started the new world order. What I mean is, throughout history, there's a fight for control because there's no world court that you go to and plead your case. And so there's a fight for power. So there's a war, and then the winners come out of that war, and the winners set the rules. And so 1945, the United States had 80% of the world's money. Gold was money at the time. It had half the world's GDP. It had a monopoly on military power. So the U.S. set the world order. That's why the United Nations is in New York. Washington, D.C. has the IMF and the World Bank.
And its currency became the reserve currency.
And its currency became the reserve currency because of that set of circumstances. Okay, things evolve. Things change. Okay, over history. So the 3 big things that are changing now that haven't occurred in our lifetime is the amount of debt and money creation, which affects the value of money, and you could see it affecting what's going on every day.
Large debt means the printing of money.
Right. The large debt puts central bankers in a choice. Do you pay it back with hard money, or do you pay it back with printed devalued money? And if you pay it back with hard money, it's hard. In other words, that's when you have debt crises. So in all cases, they eventually print money, and that produces inflation, right? So that dynamics, the first...
And that's the place we are at this moment.
That's the place we are at this moment.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that.
We'll drill down on that.
In a minute. The second is when there's a great internal conflict, usually when there's a large wealth and values gap, and at the same time as you have a financial problem. Then you get populism of the left and populism of the right. In other words, those who feel disenfranchised want people who are going to fight for them. They don't want compromisers. They don't want them to be in the middle, because middle means that they're not fighting for them. They want them to have guts. So that you have populists of the left and populists
and
of
their
the
positions
right.
harden.
And their positions harden, and there are no compromises. That's why we're potentially in a situation that you could see in one of these elections, maybe in 2024, that neither side would accept losing. Perhaps we see that. Maybe you don't follow the rulings of the Supreme Court. Anyway.
That's a serious question today.
So these things have not happened in our lifetime, but they happened many times in history.
And by the way, I just want to quickly pause this and say, yeah, we're actually at that point in time where people are just, they're not accepting of either candidate winning or losing, because it's so split down the middle, 50-50. We're at that point in time right now. That's why we do think about, is there a possible civil war-like event that could happen in the United States? And yes, this could happen with the elections. We're really kind of right there when it comes to a lot of these things that are, we have to think about it. We have to prepare for, anything, because we are right there. We're on the brink of this.
So if you look at that, you see from those patterns why the gaps become greater and the positions harden, and you see the dynamic. So that's the second. And the third is the rise of a great power to challenge the existing great power. In other words, I gave you the example of the United States was so dominant in 1945. Now it's not as dominant. It is not dominant. In other words, China and the opposition is as strong as the United States and its allies. And so we have a conflict. And there are 5 kinds of wars. And they start in this order, just sequentially, typically. A trade war, a technology war, a geopolitical influence war. Then you get into a capital and economic warfare, which we are now with sanctions. They always happened in history. And then there's a military war. And so you could see that progression happen through time. And that creates a template. So I like to look at the template and then plot dots to see how we're transpiring relative to that template.
Now, as we do think about this, this is the perfect outline for the changing world order. The stages that Ray Dalio does put out, I'm telling you guys, you need to read this because it's incredible. A lot of this, we can tie it right back to all of the events in the last couple years. But the one thing that I do believe that Ray might be missing out on is the effect that digital currencies and these new technologies will have. Because even with what the BRICS are doing, all of this is tied to the Great Reset. Remember what the World Economic Forum pushed back in June of 2020? It was all based around the Great Reset. Within this, they do break down all of the technologies. And do you notice something on this? Blockchain, digital identity, internet governance. All of these things are tied right back to the Great Reset. These are the technologies that they are going to utilize to push this forward. But this is already happening with the BRICS, right? They want to push their digital currency. They want to push back against the US dollar. They want to, separate themselves from the SWIFT network. And if we go back in time to 2022, March 2022, when we announced the sanctions against Russia, the next day we put out an executive order, 14067, outlining the digital dollar, CBDCs, digital currencies in the US. All of this stuff is tied together. It's all about, problem, reaction, solution. But the issue now is we are headed into stage 6. And Ray Dalio does talk about this. This is the civil and or international war. I personally believe that we are about to witness possibly civil war, especially with the elections. It's split 50-50. Apparently, we saw the largest turnout in terms of voters back in the previous election. This time around, they're expecting even more. I strongly believe that things are about to get really serious. And the best way to prepare for this is not only to prepare for possibly civil war hitting the US, but also it's time to start looking into physical gold, physical silver, and investing into the technologies that these elites are trying to use against us. Because if you hold, significant portions of these assets, these technologies that these elites are going to use, it allows you to not only get wealthy through this, but also be prepared for this. I'm telling you guys right now, majority of the world is asleep at the wheel right now as these things are happening. And the pandemic, because this got pushed right around the pandemic time, the pandemic accelerated this. It accelerated the reset. It accelerated the changing world order. So with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, set notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord down in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.